Hey guys, welcome to my video of what is in my opinion the best main battle tank loadout for Battlefield 4. The main battle tank is probably my favorite vehicle in Battlefield 4. It just feels very in power on the battlefield, and I like the just beast feeling you get with it, like you can take on anything. Now, it can sometimes be quite a difficult vehicle to use and to master, but once you start getting good with it and start learning the ropes, it becomes very rewarding. Now, let's get into what I prefer to run with on my tank. I always run the Black Shark camo, which I do on every vehicle, including my tank. It is my preferred camo for anything really, both weapons and vehicles. Now, it's not a good camo by any means, it doesn't really camouflage you particularly well, but it just looks so damn awesome. But on to more serious accessories for the tank. Let's first of all take the primary weapon. In this category you can choose between three different options, which is the AP shell or armor piercing shell, the HE shell or high explosive shell, and the Sabot shell. You start off with the AP shell, which is the second best shell in my opinion. The best one is definitely the Sabot, simply because of its travel speed and that it does not have like any drop whatsoever. As far as I know, the Sabot shell does as much damage as the AP shell, it just travels considerably faster, that's the only difference. The high explosive shell is also a good shell, but its travel time and its drop just makes it a really hard shell to use against further away targets, and also targets that are, for example, airborne, if you're trying to shoot a helicopter. So I would recommend the Sabot shell for the primary weapon. It is one of the last things you unlock for the main battle tank though, but the armor piercing shell is definitely a good option until you unlock the Sabot shell. Now, let's get on to the secondary weapon. In this category you have 5 things to choose between, which is the coaxial light machine gun, the guided shell, the coaxial heavy machine gun, the canister shell, and the staff shell. In this category I prefer and recommend the staff shell, because it's simply amazing and maybe a little bit overpowered. The staff shell, as the description reads, is a 120mm shell with a smart warhead that automatically identifies and locks on to enemy targets and then explodes above them for a critical hit. That might not say much or be difficult to understand, but what it essentially means is that the shell has an auto lock-on feature, within a certain range of course, so it works very much like the starter rocket launcher for the engineer class, the MBT Law. So what you do with this shell is that you fire the shell in the general area of the enemy target, and the shell will then automatically lock on and hit the enemy target. Since it is one of the last unlocks for the main battle tank, just like the Sabot shell, I recommend that you use the heavy machine gun, the coaxial heavy machine gun, until you unlock the staff shell. The heavy machine gun is also a good alternative to the staff shell for more infantry and light armor based maps, although on most of the maps that you have a main battle tank available, they will most likely be quite vehicle heavy. Now, onto the countermeasures. Here you can choose between IR smoke, smoke screen, fire extinguisher, and active protection. In this category I recommend active protection, which is a countermeasure that you activate and then it will go into a state of awareness, where it will detect incoming missiles and similar threats, and then proceed to neutralize them. After a threat has been neutralized or it didn't detect any threats for a short amount of time, it will go into an inactive state again. It has a 30-second cooldown from when it's activated to when you can use it again. What this active protection does is that it essentially makes you able to take one more tank shell or RPG or similar threats before your tank blows up. The disadvantage/advantage of active protection is that it requires you to activate it, and your timing needs to be good. And a really good thing about active protection compared to IR smoke or smoke screen is that it prevents not only lock-on threats but also unguided threats, like tank shells and also like the various unguided rocket launchers in the game, like for example the RPG. There are some problems with active protection though, and because of how buggy and laggy the game can be, especially on big servers, missiles or other threats might still hit even though you activated active protection at the perfect time. But if everything comes together right and under the right circumstances, then active protection should block more or less anything. I recommend that you stick with the stock IR smoke or the smoke screen until you unlock the active protection, which is also one of the later unlocks for the main battle tank. Now, in the optics category, you have zoom optics, IRNV optics, and thermal optics. Here I recommend the zoom optics, simply because it gives you the accuracy at range, and in most maps with main battle tanks on, you are fighting other tanks or threats at ranges. Besides the occasional close encounter, but there you have a standard one-time zoom anyways. So it will leave you at an advantage when fighting at ranges, and at no real disadvantage in any other cases. When fighting on an infantry heavy map, / close encounter map, like Dawnbreaker, I could see a use for the thermal optics, because it would be considerably easier to acquire and take out smaller targets, like infantry and light armor. But in the long run, zoom optics is the way to go. You have 4 different upgrades to choose from for your battle tank, which is the maintenance upgrade, the thermal camo upgrade, the autoloader upgrade, and the reactive armor upgrade. I recommend that you use the reactive armor upgrade. The reactive armor upgrade is, in my experience, the most effective and best choice. What reactive armor does is that it makes the hostile projectile detonate prematurely, and it makes it detonate away from the primary armor of the vehicle. And the primary armor will now not be getting the full impact of the projectile. It will still do damage, but not as much, and it makes the impact have to hit harder to count as a critical hit. The maintenance upgrade is also very powerful, and until you unlock the reactive armor, that's the one I recommend you stick with. What the maintenance upgrade does is that it makes your vehicle recover from fights much faster, because it makes the vehicle's auto repair much more powerful. So with the reactive armor and the maintenance upgrades, you kinda just have a choice between recovering from a fight faster or being able to take more damage when in a fight. I will be sticking with the reactive armor because I tend to pull out of engagements a bit later than what I probably should. And I've actually had the reactive armor save my ass a ton of times by giving me a little bit extra to go on. Now, for the gunner optics. You can choose between zoom optics, IRNV optics, and thermal optics. I recommend the thermal optics for this category because it makes target acquiring considerably easier and more manageable in hectic situations. And your job as a gunner is to keep primarily infantry off the tank and help the tank driver in the defense of the tank. Also to help spot out targets for the driver. It just feels like thermal is a really solid choice for this task. The IRNV is also a good alternative because it does more or less the same as thermal, but a little bit different. Now, for the gunner upgrade, you can choose between gunner belt feeder, gunner proximity scan, gunner SOFLAM, and gunner incendiary. Here I recommend that you stick with the standard belt feeder upgrade. It is, in my opinion, the most solid choice of the 4. The belt feeder upgrade makes you reload faster, which is quite useful as a gunner, especially in the very intense situations where you need to dish out the maximum amount of bullets as fast as possible. In my experience, the proximity scan shouldn't be necessary, simply because you as a gunner should be situationally aware enough not to need it. The gunner SOFLAM has the potential to be a good upgrade for the gunner, but in the time that I tried using it, I discovered that it was so few allies that run around with something that can lock on to lace targets, like the Javelin rocket launcher for example. But if you were to use the SOFLAM while playing with an organized group of people that was running something that could take advantage of the SOFLAM, then it would be quite powerful. But in a random server, it's just not that useful. Now, the gunner incendiary, I quite looked forward to unlocking, thinking that this was going to be quite incredible. It turned out it wasn't. It has a very small range, which makes it quite useless, since you can only deploy it around 5 meters away from the tank, at the most. So in short, the belt feeder is the safest and best choice overall. So there you have it, what I would deem the best loadout for the main battle tank in Battlefield 4. Like if you enjoyed the video, and subscribe for more. Thanks for watching the video guys, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.